Good morning, children. In today's session, we are going to take up the second chapter of your class 7th geography book, that is, the inside our earth. Now, we all know our earth is round like a ball, it looks like a ball. So, what is this ball made up of from inside? So, we are going to study that in this chapter. So, as you can see in this diagram beta, the earth is made up of layers. Now, you all must have seen an onion. Onion is made up of different concentric layers covering one on the other. Same way, the earth, it is also made up of three different layers. Three different concentric layers with one inside another. And let me tell you the name of these three layers. The outermost layer is the crust. It is called as the crust. The middle layer is called the mantle. And the innermost layer is called the core. So there are three layers out of which the earth is made up of. Now let us come on to the earth's crust first. So the first layer, the outermost layer. Now this layer, it is the uppermost layer of the earth's surface. It is called crust, and it is the thinnest of all the layers, all the three layers, okay? And it is about 35 kilometers on the land masses, on the continental masses. Wherever land is there, there the width of this layer, the crust, is 35 kilometers. Whereas on the ocean floors, the width of this layer, that is crust, is just 5 kilometers on the ocean floors. Okay. So then we come on to the minerals out of which this crust is made. Now this crust is made up of, especially this continental mass. The crust which is found on the land mass, that is the continental mass, it is made up of two minerals. One is silica and the other is alumina. So if we take the first two letters of silica and first two letters of alumina, then we form a short name which is called as Sial, Si of silica and Al of alumina. So we get the word Sial. So we can say it's help us to remember that the two minerals out of which the earth's continental crust, land mass वाला जो crust है, that it is made up of two minerals which are silica and alumina. So it is called as Sial. Okay. Now the oceanic crust, the crust which is found in the ocean, that is made up of two minerals. One is silica and the second one is different here. The second one is magnesium. So again, if we take two letters of silica and two letters of magnesium, we get Sima, Sima. So the continental crust is called as Sial, and the oceanic crust, it is made up of two minerals, that is Sima, Simas. Si for silica, Ma for magnesium. Now this is about crust. Now we come on to the second layer, that is the mantle. Now this just beneath the crust, so under the first layer, that is the crust, lies the mantle, and it extends up to the depth of 2900 kilometers. So the depth of mantle is 2900 kilometers under the crust. And then the third most, that is the innermost layer, it is called the core, and it extends up to, it has got the radius about 3500 kilometers. And again, this is made up of minerals like nickel and iron. So again, if we take the first two letters of each, Ni of nickel and Fe of iron, which is also called as ferrous in the chemical language. So N-I-F-E, knife. So the innermost layer, which is called the core, which has got the radius of 3500 kilometers, it is made up of two minerals, knife, Ni for nickel and Fe for ferrous, that is iron. Now children, we all know the central core, this layer, it has got very high temperature and pressure. So this is all about the layers of the earth, the three main layers out of which the earth is made up of. Now we come on to the second topic of this chapter, that is the rocks and the minerals. We all know that earth's crust, the outermost layer, which we say, it is made up of various types of rocks and minerals. So what is a rock? So in order to define rock, we can say any natural mass of mineral. So any natural mass of mineral, that means rocks are also made up of minerals. So any natural mass of mineral matter that makes up the earth crust is called a rock. So or whatever mineral matter which makes up the earth crust, they are all called as rocks. Now we all know, you might have seen also, rocks, they are made up, they are of different colors. Sometimes we see white colored rocks, sometimes grayish, sometimes dark. So different shines also, texture also different, their size differs. So if we have to differentiate into different types of rocks, so we have mainly three different types of rocks: igneous rocks, sedimentary rocks, and metamorphic rocks. So please turn the page of your book, children, if you have your book with you. So there are three types of rocks: igneous rocks, sedimentary rocks, and metamorphic rocks. Now first of all, we will take up igneous rocks. Now children, when the molten magma cools, now what is molten magma? The magma which comes out of the volcanoes. You might have seen in movies and television and videos, volcanoes erupting and fiery liquid coming out of it, which is very hot and burning. So that is called as molten magma. So when this molten magma cools, it becomes solid, and the rocks thus formed, they are called as the igneous rocks. They are also called as the primary rocks, the main rocks, because the rest of the two rocks, the sedimentary and the metamorphic, they are made out of igneous rocks. So the igneous rocks, they are made up of the cooling down of the molten magma, and they are also called as the primary rocks. Now there are two types of igneous rocks. We can differentiate them into two types. One is intrusive rocks, one is extrusive rocks. Intrusive and extrusive. Now what is the difference between these two? When this molten magma, we're coming out of the volcanoes or the interior of the earth, when it comes out and it cools on the surface of the earth, outside, on the surface of the earth, it cools down very rapidly, and the rocks which are formed in this way on the surface of the earth, they are called as extrusive igneous rocks. And children, they have a very fine grained structure. So example of this kind of rock, extrusive igneous rocks, is basalt. All the Deccan Plateau, it is made up of basalt rocks. And now we come on to the intrusive igneous rocks. When sometimes this molten magma cools inside the earth only, deep down inside the earth, the rocks, though such formed in such a way, they are called as intrusive. So we can remember very easily, when the lava cools inside the rocks so formed, they are intrusive, and when the lava comes out and it cools on the surface of the earth, the rocks though formed, they are the extrusive Indian rocks, extrusive igneous rocks. So since they cool down, since they cool down very slowly, because inside the earth the temperature is very high, so they form large grains. So granite is an example of such a rock. Intrusive, no? All the grinding stones, which are used to prepare pastes and powders of spices and grains, they are all made up of granite. So granite is an example of intrusive igneous rocks. So these were the two kinds of igneous rocks. Now we come on to the second type of rocks, that is the sedimentary rocks. Now how are they formed? Now we know rocks, they roll down, they roll down, they break and they crack and they hit each other, and then again they are broken down into small fragments. So these small fragments or particles, they are called as sediments. Now when these sediments, children, they are transported by the wind or water, they are deposited somewhere, no? These loose sediments, when they are deposited on each other, they are compressed and they are hardened, and then they form layers of rocks. So when these sediments, they are deposited by wind or water at somewhere, and in the form of layers, and they are compressed on each other, they are hardened, they form a layer of rocks, and such layered rocks, they are called as sedimentary rocks. The example of sedimentary rocks is sandstone, which is made from grains of sand. So when grains of sand, they are deposited on each other, they are compressed and they are hardened, they form a sandstone. Sand से बनते हैं. Sandstone जो है, it is made up of the grains of sand and it is a sedimentary rock. So we can remember like this: S for sandstone and S for sedimentary rocks. No? Now these rocks may also contain some fossils of plants or animals or some other microorganisms that once lived on them, because these rocks, they are formed over a long period of time, and suppose in these layers some plants, they get buried, or some animals, they get buried, or some microorganisms, if they get buried along with these layers, so we may find in the sedimentary rocks all these kinds of fossils. So igneous and sedimentary rocks, they can change into metamorphic rocks. Now we move on to the third one. The igneous rocks and sedimentary rocks, they can change, and then when they change into metamorphic rocks. How do they change? They change under great heat and pressure. So when igneous and sedimentary rocks, they undergo great heat and pressure, they change into metamorphic rocks. For example, clay, it changes into slate, and limestone, it changes into marble. So marble and slate, we can say they are two examples of metamorphic rocks. Slate is formed from clay and marble is formed from limestone. Now we all know rocks are very useful to us, because hard rocks, they are used for making houses, roads, buildings. Then we use stones for playing so many types of games once upon a time. Now we are going to take up a very interesting topic, which is called as the rock cycle. So how one rock is converted into another, and the another is converted into third, and the third one again changes into the first type. So that is called a cycle. Now one type of rock changes into another type under certain conditions in a cyclic manner. This process of changing and transformation of the rock from one to another, it is called as rock cycle. जब एक rock दूसरे में convert हो जाता है and it forms a cycle, this is called as rock cycle. So we have already learnt when molten magma cools and it becomes hard and it becomes a igneous rock. And now then these igneous rocks, they are broken down into small particles, and then they are transported by wind, and they are deposited on one layer and to so many layers, and thus we get the sedimentary rocks. And when the igneous and the sedimentary rocks, they are subjected to great heat and pressure, they change into metamorphic rock. This is what we learned just now, na? So the metamorphic rocks, which are still under great heat and pressure, they melt down to form molten magma. So now the end product, that is the metamorphic rocks, if they are still facing lot of heat and pressure, then it melts down. The metamorphic rock melts down and it forms molten magma, and then again the cycle comes back. This molten magma again cools down and solidifies into the igneous rocks. So quite interesting, na, rock cycle. So children, this is what we have to learn about in this chapter. And we know that rocks, they are all made up of different kinds of minerals. And minerals, they are naturally occurring substances which have certain physical and chemical properties. And minerals, they are very important for humankind also. Like some of the minerals, they are used as fuel also, like जैसे कि coal, natural gas है, petroleum है, and then we use minerals in the industry also, like iron, aluminium, gold, uranium, and sometimes even in medicines and fertilizers. So this is what we have to learn about in this chapter. I hope you have understood just a very small and interesting chapter. Children, go through the chapter, read through it. It's very interesting. Then we'll take it up in the class. Thank you and have a nice day.